Hi and welcome to this next video in this tutorial series where we are going to continue to rig our characters. So I've sort of jumped ahead and I've added in the finger joints and just sort of scale that there. 1 second, let's get the control and let me just hide the joints. In fact, if I hide the joints you'll be able to see it, so I can just squeeze in there. So that control, there we go. And obviously you can see I haven't parented them yet, but I think I've done the wrist, and you can see the finger joints coming down there. So obviously they haven't been orientated. But before we move forward, what I would just like to point out is that I've gone ahead and created the spine, okay, for the body, and obviously you can see all that moving, and obviously we've got sort of neck control, and finally we'll have the head, which can move in obviously in a direction, and so yeah, we're gonna slowly build these together. And most of this rig, so from the waist upwards and from the shoulder down, relies off a method we discussed last week, which was forwards kinetics. So it's an FK rig. Now for the leg we're going to do something, but do something a bit different. Okay, so within this one, if I just bring this up, you can see I have my foot moving out, and to be doing this at level 3 is very good for you, for those of you especially going to university who have an interest in digital art, but also it's taking you up that next step. Okay, it's really pushing you and your skills, as most people don't really encounter this type of rig until they get to HE. Okay, so which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is, if we take a look at the outliner and I hold shift, you will see this rig open up, and as you can see there's an awful lot of joints within this. Okay, these are all done for you, and basically the leg is what we're going to build, and for this I'm going to delete these joints. Okay, so if we go to the IK handle, I'm going to delete the IK handle. I'm going to select this control. You won't have these yet, so if you're thinking why haven't I got those, you're not, because you're going to build it. And I'm going to go to skeleton and remove joints, and I'm just going to select, I can select these and go to skeleton, remove joints. Okay, so let's go skeleton, remove joints, skeleton, remove joints, and finally if I can select this. I'm a bit worried about which way this is going to go, so it's attached to the hip and I can't. So skeleton, there we go. Okay, so what you should see at this moment in time is this rig. Okay, so we've got one arm complete and the rest of the upper body and the parent control. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hide the mesh for this next step. So I'm going to go to show and I'm going to turn off polygons and hide that. Okay, so we can see what we have here, but we will turn it back on in a second. So I'm going to go to front, and as you can see we've got the waist going up, we've got this going down, and the next step is to add our feet going in. So what I'm going to do is just re-show the polygons. I'm going to go into wireframe, and what we're going to do is draw in sort of a hip bone coming out. We're going to then do another bone coming down to the knee, to the ankle, and into the toes. And to do that, we're going to be in the side view, but initially for this first bone coming out for the hip, we need to be in the front view. So I'm going to go to skeleton, I'm going to go to create joints, and I'm going to select this piece here, which should connect this next piece to it as it is, as you can see. And I'm going to pull this out from around here where we want this leg to turn. Okay, and from that basically gives us our point for our knee to orientate from. So from this, I'm going to go to perspective, orthographic, panels, orthographic, and I'm going to go to side. And from this joint, I'm going to add in another one at the knee, and this time I'm going to do it slightly forward, and there's a very specific reason we're doing this, which I'll explain in a while. I'm going to take the next one down to roughly where my ankle area is, which is here. I'm going to take the next one to roughly where my toes are, and finally I'm going to right click for the dummy bone, okay, which is great. We now have that chain set up, and if we go to our joints, you can see it's added on at this point down here, okay, and we're going to rename these as left, so do an L left, and I'm going to call this one hip or left leg, and I'm going to call this hip, and I'm just going to copy this name, and I'm going to paste it down here. I'm going to change hip to knee, and the next one I'm going to change the hip to ankle, copy and paste, and I'm going to go to the next one to toe, and finally this is going to be our dummy, because our dummy objects go at the root of our chain. So now we have our joint set up. I'm going to hide the polygons. So as I said to you before, we had our forward kinesthetics, okay, which is FK, and that means the chain of reaction follows the previous joint. So if I rotate this angle here, this one will it will follow this parent one, and so forth, as we discussed last week. For the leg, it's slightly different. So for the leg, we're actually going to use a process called inverse kinesthetics, okay, kinetics, and this is where it's basically a process that calculates the space between two joints. So if we go to side, so I'm going to select this top joint and this bottom joint, and basically it routes through the top thigh bone and the calf bone, and links these two mathematically, and actually allows it to calculate where about the spacing in between as a sort of triangulation. So we're going to go to our constraint, and this time we're going to add in where was it? Okay, sorry, let's go to skeleton, and we're going to go to create IK handle, okay, just select the options on there, single chain, and solver enable, snap enable, and we'll keep that looking pretty fine. I think we'll stick with default settings for now, and I'm going to select this top bone, and I'm going to select this bottom bone down here, okay, at the ankle. And now what this creates is this IK handle down here, okay, and you can see it's just attached onto this section here as well, but this is our IK handle. And if I push W, you can see that now what happens is we can move our foot, and it's calculating that space, okay. So I'm going to just push Control Z, push it back in its original position, and the next sort of step is to create a control. So before we've been using spheres, but this time what I would like you to do is to create your own shape. So we're going to go to let's go down, and we're going to go to curve tools, and I think we're going to go with the CV curve. Let me just check this to make sure it's the one that we want. No, it's not that one, so you just have to bear with me a second. I can't remember exactly which one it is, and nope. There we go. So it is the Bezier curve tool. So sorry, I do get mixed up with these over time. So obviously we want to create this sort of as accurately as we can. So what I'm going to do is turn on snap, okay, which means that when we draw, so it's this icon up here, it should stick to set points on this map. And I'm going to draw it around these joints, okay. And I'm just going to make that connection around here. Oh, so let's go again, and this time I'm just going to join it just before. I'm going to go to my select tool and hold down the right mouse button, control vertex, select this vertex, push W, and if I move it across it will snap to that corner point. I'm going to go right click and object mode. Okay, so because obviously we don't want the controls crossing over at the center of this once we duplicate it for the other foot, I'm going to go back into my control vertex. This time I'm going to turn off snap, and I'm going to pull these in slightly, okay, and then I'm going to go back to object mode. Then what I'm going to do is to take my IK handle, and I'm going to parent this to this object. So I'm going to select the IK handle, which is this here, and I'm going to hold shift and select my control, and then I'm going to attach the child to the parent by pushing P. And what you will find now is that when we rotate this around, it follows, which is brilliant, which is exactly what we want. And I'm just going to rotate that, and you can see it's rotating, the control vertex is rotating, but there is an issue, and that is our foot is not rotating around with it. So we can move it up and the toes are just going off in any direction that they like, and obviously we don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is the first step, I think we're going to reposition this point from this curve into at the ankle. So to do that, that's the pivot point. We're going to push insert, and we're going to hold down and we're going to push that right back into the middle there, okay. And when we push insert now, what should happen is when we rotate this point, it will rotate from where that foot is, which is exactly what we want, okay. So if I remember correctly, to constrain the orientation of this to a foot, we're going to do what I did with the arms and go to constrain and go to orientation, and we've selected them in the wrong way around, so select the control first. It might be because we've parented it. Let me just check. So yeah, we're going to parent the IK control to this object, so I'm going to select both of those and push P, and then with this joint, which is the ankle joint, if you check on the outliner, I'm going to parent that constrain its orientation to the control. So I'm going to select my control, I'm going to select the joint, I'm going to go to constrain, and then I'm going to go to orient the orientation, okay. Now what should happen is my foot should rotate with it and the toes follow it, as you can see, and if I move this up it should all follow up, okay. So very quickly we've got a really nice leg control, okay. And just check channel box, everything's at 0, and we're looking really cool. We now have that constraint. The IK constraint, we've got FK arms for good swinging, and if we just check our naming, all of that's fine. Our controls are down here, so if we select for Bezier 1, we can change its name to foot control, so CTRL. Now the issue that we're going to have here is if we move our whole rig, okay, so let's say we want to move our character all the way over here into the scene. Oh, none of your controls are attached. They will be for your video, don't worry. What tends to happen is the joints will not follow. Okay, well, control won't follow. None of these are following at the moment. So what we have to do is parent this to the master control. So we're going to push P, and so what happens is if we need to move globally, we can move the foot control with it. You can imagine all the bones falling. But if we want to move locally our joint, then what will happen is our foot will remain as close to this as it possibly and physically can before it's dragged off, which is exactly what we want to happen. Okay, so the sort of last stage is going to be to duplicating the leg. So I'm just going to pause this for you. It will seem like nothing, and I'm going to just attach these joints to the bones, and we'll go from there. So as you can see now, I've just been ahead and can put all these together. So we now have half of our skeleton complete, and the final sort of stage of this process, what was happening there was I duplicated from this joint. I've probably edited this out of the video and you're thinking what am I going on about, but basically I duplicated from this joint, and obviously duplicate these ones going up as well, which is not what we want. We just want to duplicate from this point. So with this selected, we're going to go to, we want to mirror this system on the other side. So we're going to go to skeleton, mirror joints, go to settings. By default yours will have these laid out, and we want to go to YZ, and we want to change it from to orientation, and we want to search for L underscore, which is at the beginning of these joints names, which is on the left hand side, and we want to change them to R underscore, because that means it will rename them on the right side so we know which joints are which. I'm going to push apply, and you'll see it will create those joints on the other side. Okay, and for the leg, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to select this top joint, and we're going to click apply again with the same settings, and as you can see, we've now ended up with a duplicate. Okay, so in this video we've now been ahead and we've gone through and created these joints. We don't have a duplicate of all of the controls. We still have the IK constraint, but obviously we don't have the control. So what you're going to have to do is go ahead and finish off the rig, okay, as part of your assessment. So I've taken you this far. It's now up to you to create the controls for the other leg and create them for the remaining parts of the joints of this body. So the wrist may get really confusing because of how big the bones are. So to change the joint size, we're going to go to display, go all the way down to animation, and go to joint size. And within the joint size, we're going to change this to 0.4, and hopefully that will allow you to actually look at the hands in a bit more detail, and hopefully be able to apply those controls. Again, to quickly demonstrate this, to create the controls, we're going to create a circle object. I'm going to take its radius to, I think we'll keep it on 1. I'm fairly sure that's what we did before. So I'm just going to measure this now up here. I'm going to rotate again 90 degrees. I think I kept these the same size. If not, we can just resize them. So I'm going to change that to 90. I'm going to push W, just bring it in, just check that. Yeah, it's roughly the same radius. So to make obviously this bigger, push plus and minus on the keyboard. And if I go to the side view, sorry, the front view, push F to focus there, and I hold V and I put it down, it will snap into that joint, and then obviously I can rename my joints how I did with the previous one. When you come to parent these, so when you've parented, and you parent, as I say, from, if you remember from the last video, you always start at the ends and parent them back up along the chain. So every finger will be parented to the wrist one by one. That will be start at the dummy, well, not the dummy, but the tips, and each control will be parented until we end up back at a shoulder, and then the shoulder's put in with this one here, which will allow it to rotate around. So if I just push W, I'm sorry, ignore that. So if I go back down to this control and I start rotating, you can see all the controls are following. Okay, so the foot should be fairly easy to do. The hand is, this section is going to be left for you to work out independently. If you have trouble doing it, don't get stressed, don't worry. You can still achieve the criteria for this. This section of the hand is for those, obviously, for those of you that want to aim for that high grade. So I'm leaving that for you to independently work out. Okay, so but I just want to reiterate, what you're doing here is really technical. Most people won't do this till they start university. So never lose sight of the fact that you are doing something really good here, really high standard. So once you've done that, you can apply the same skinning technique as we did in the previous video, but to your whole mesh. So to show you mesh again, we can go polygons, and you should have a fully completed mesh at this point, and then you can apply it and start to rig, paint those weights on, and then you'll be ready to animate your character. Or at least animate this rig. I said you may need to recreate bones for your own character, but again, following the principles that are applied here, you should be able to achieve that. Okay, so any questions, drop me an email, and if not, I will see you in the next video.